For an in-depth look at the latest on the war in Ukraine, we're joined now by Lieutenant Colonel Danny Davis, a senior fellow at Defense Priorities. Lieutenant Colonel, thank you so much for joining us. I want to talk a little bit about what we heard in that interview Molly had talking about the counteroffensive. I left Ukraine 10 days ago after spending a month there, and there's been so much back and forth over this counteroffensive where you've had high-ranking officials say, it's starting, we're doing preps, it's not quite starting yet. Then President Zelensky at one point saying, we're waiting for more weapons before we formally start this counteroffensive because some things like tanks, they've been coming in waves and we need to wait. Where are things right now when it comes to this counteroffensive? And what we heard in Molly's piece there, what does that tell you about Ukraine's path forward?
Well, especially when you compare it to what National Security Advisor Danilov told the BBC earlier today. He said they are ready, and he said it could come any day, 1 or 2 days. He said he's not going to tell them when, but by all evidence seems to suggest that they are ready to go. And probably within a few days, they're going to launch off into something. The big question is going to be, what are they going to attempt to do? Where are they going to strike? And what are their objectives going to be? This whole issue with the Bakhmut battle that had raged for all these months and just recently wrapped up really may have a residual cost to Ukraine because they had to spend so much reserves that they had planned to be in part of this offensive. Now they'll have fewer troops. Even if they have most of the weapons that the West has given them, their striking power won't be quite as much. So Zelensky has a high-stakes gamble that he's going on here because if this doesn't work, he doesn't have any more striking power behind this. So if he succeeds, that he's going to get a lot more support, I think, from the West. But it's just uncertain how this is going to work out. And it's a lot of high tension in Kiev right now.
What do you think success would look like for Western allies? If the concern from Ukraine's point of view is if we're not successful in taking back a lot of territory here, we might not get the weapons supply that we've gotten from Western allies. What do you think Western allies like the United States will consider a successful counteroffensive?
Yeah, I think they're going to have at least a moderate amount of territory retaken that Russia's trying to hold. And that could be, a city like the size of Avdiivka or perhaps the size and possibly even Bakhmut to try to retake that. But something that's fairly significant, even though everyone knows they don't have the capacity of this one offensive to drive Russia out of Ukraine. That's not even possible. But they do have to have some degree of success. And it's really difficult to say what that is. But if they try to launch this, for example, when they tried to flank Bakhmut about 10 days ago, they tried to cut it off and go deep into the flanks, but did not take even one city on either side, and it stalled out. That they can't afford again, because if that does happen, I think there really will be a lot of pressure among Europe to say, hey, this is not going to work. You're going to have to make a negotiated settlement. And then I think that the weapons are going to start drying up. So there's a lot at stake.
Yeah. To another headline out of the region while we have you, Lieutenant Colonel, Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko, he's a close ally of President Vladimir Putin. He's promised nuclear weapons to any nation that joins Russia and Belarus. Lukashenko's comments coming just days after he confirmed the transfer of Russian nuclear weapons to his country. How much stock do you put in this latest announcement? Is it cause for concern, or is this just rhetoric from Lukashenko?
Anytime you're having a lot of loose rhetoric with nuclear weapons, you have to be concerned. And I think that we all should be paying attention to this and not just dismiss it. But the truth is that even though those nuclear weapons are on now Belarusian soil, they're still fully under the control of Moscow. So it's not like anyone's going to get nuclear weapons. So in that regard, Lukashenko has a history of making some rather odd statements in his history, and this seems like it's kind of in that category. But the fact that nuclear weapons are now closer to the Ukrainian territory is a concern, because that release authority still resides with Vladimir Putin, and that is no joke.
All right, Lieutenant Colonel Danny Davis, thank you so much. We appreciate your insight.
Thank you very much.